So before we start, I want to say a few words about the land that I find myself on. And just so we're all sort of in this context, that every community is built on generations from around the world who contributed their hopes, dreams, and energy to making the history that led to this moment. We know that some of our ancestors were brought here against their will. Some were drawn to leave their distant homes in hope of a better life, and some have lived on this land for more generations than can be counted. I'm here on the ancestral and unceded lands of the Wabanaki people on this part of the river, specifically the Cushnock band of the Kennebec tribe. We benefit from their stewardship of this land for many generations, and we pay respect to them, past and present. So it's good to take a moment to consider all of our heritages and journeys and the many legacies of displacement, migration, violence, and settlement that bring us together here today. So please join me in uncovering truths at any and all opportunities and supporting self-determination of all peoples. Thank you. So, such paradoxes we are experiencing right now, as we all are too well aware, access to your current and potential future students has been pulled out from under you due to this pandemic. Just one of the many casualties. Families, teachers, and administrators struggle to provide arts education, and many teaching artists wish they could be providing arts education. And we know, of course we know, that creative experiences, these critical heart and soul-based opportunities, are what is most needed right now. So, because you all are amazing people, and due to your ingenuity, perseverance, and out-of-the-box thinking, some teaching artists have been able to reconnect with students. So we get to spend the next hour plus with some of you who, I'm sure there's others who are doing great things, and I hope we can get a chance to hear those here and there. But to have some presentations, some question and answer periods, some discussion, more question and answer periods. We are going to start off with Bridget Matros, who is a former colleague of mine, and her current position is the Kids and Families Program Manager at Waterfall Arts. And she's also a teaching artist of many different visual and performing disciplines, yes? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Great. Great. Okay, so I'm gonna let all the panelists really talk about what their successes have been like and how they've surmounted some hurdles. So go for it.
All right, cool. Hey everybody, so glad that you're here. My name is Bridget. Like Martha said, I'm in Belfast, Maine. And in addition to being at Waterfall Arts, where I actually have the privilege of teaching every week, I'm still teaching one program with very few students in person and a couple of virtual programs. I use my vacation time from that job to do residencies. And this is my third year doing a residency in Brunswick through the organization called Arts Are Elementary, and that's in Brunswick. I do exclusively so far kindergarten, which is a total joy. So this year, just as I have in normal times, in pre-COVID times, I saw 200 kindergartners over the course of a week. And in Brunswick right now at Kate Furbish Elementary School, they're using a model like a lot of schools are, where some kids are in school in the classroom, but there are very few kids in every classroom because of distancing. And then a whole bunch of kids are all remote all the time. And so with the help of my teacher liaison at the school, we figured out a schedule and the technology to figure a format that would work really well, which turned out to be doing separate sessions where I was brought like this to their classrooms, and we could fit 2 classrooms at a time on the screen. So there were 2 different classes on my screen, and I was projected on a big screen in their classroom. And on other days, it was me and like 35 children in their homes on their screens, and we used Google Meet. And I'll just say quickly, but we're all open to your questions and comments later. The highlights for me that are making, I should say, because I'm only 1/3 of the way through my residency. I have 2 more visits through the school year, but the highlight for me that made it really possible is, first and foremost, my teacher liaison, who put in a lot of extra time. And she's a mom, and she's the lead kindergarten teacher, and she still took a ton of her own personal time to work out all these kinks, to email me, to talk on the phone. She actually had to leave her classroom kids reading a book for a minute so she could jump on to somebody else's session because something wasn't going well. So I can't really imagine having figured out this for the first time without that teacher helping out. My second blessing was that I know the school and they know me. I know all the teachers. I know that they just moved into a new building. And so a lot of the stuff that happens in the beginning of your relationship with the school as a teaching artist was already done. And so that was very helpful. And the hardest thing, and you'll probably hear this more, was the technology. Now, I'm privileged in that I've already been struggling with this for months, and have clawed my way through a lot of the most obvious issues. So I'm really kind of turning the screws on finer points. But I created a little 3-page handout that Martha is going to share with everybody that may or may not be useful to you if you're doing some sort of similar format. But whether you're using Zoom or Google Meet or whatever the school wants to use, my number one piece of advice, if nothing else gets through, is you have to practice, and you have to practice with real people on other machines in other places. That is my my hard-won wisdom to you. And you really need more people online in the school than you expect. Yeah, but feel free to put questions in the chat and we'll come back to them later. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. You were gonna, did you show any images?
Oh, I can. Yeah, I do have them set up quite nicely now. Let's try it. Let me be the guinea pig. So I just want to show you, and some of you are super familiar with this and going, yeah, well, what else would it look like? And some of you, this is new, but this is my setup. This is literally where I'm sitting right now. I look weird right now because I usually broadcast in the daytime and there's no natural light in here right now. So I have this terrible LED on me, but this was mission control for my residency. So this is one of the 2 scenarios that I had. And this one is, as I said, there are 2 teachers on there who both teach only kids who are at home. And so there's another screen full of children in this particular class. So there were, whatever the max is, 24 or 25 kids per session. And then on other days, looked like this. So I would actually have 2 of these screens on my screen, and you can see that the kids are watching me. This is so meta on their big whiteboard screen. But yeah, that's just to give you a sense of what the teaching artist's view of the classroom is in these interesting times.
Do you want to just say about that setup that you have your other your phone looking down on what you're doing?
Yeah, I'm kind of underneath this contraption right now. So you can log into whatever classroom you're using as 2 users. So I would be Bridget Matros 1, and then I'd come in through my phone as Bridget Matros 2, which I balance on right now it's a piece of plywood across stacks of boxes so that I can toggle between an above shot and a face shot. I actually like to keep both of them because some kids are listening with their eyes, but that lets kids see your materials better than trying to do this the whole time.
Great, thank you. Great, so now we're going to hear from Alicia Phelps, who is a piano and voice artist, and today she'll be talking to us as the Director of Community Partnerships and Special Programs. I can hear you. I can hear me twice.
Oh. I was afraid you could hear my cat in the background. She's making a day. Thank you all. Thank you all for being here, and it is so nice to be with you in this digital space and to connect with you. Yes, my name is Alicia Phelps, and I am first and foremost a teaching artist, teaching piano and voice at 317 Maine, and I also work as the Director of Community Partnerships and Programs at 317 Maine, where we work with a number of community arts organizations, community centers, schools, libraries, and really any place where students are to provide supplementary music programming. So my role in these programs has previously been as a teaching artist, delivering the programs to organizations, and now I work as a liaison between teaching artists who have the specific knowledge for a program and schools or these community centers that are looking to bring those programs, bring that supplemental learning into certain spaces and see the value in that learning. And I think that's why we're all here. So I'm delighted to be talking with you through the very long, winding, twisting road that has been programming through COVID and programming through remote and distanced learning. We have had to be really creative in how we deliver programs and in what a program even means to us. What is a residency? What is a program with a public school? And what does that look like? So for us, previously, we've had a number of long-standing programs and intensives with different schools in the Portland Public School District, including Casco Bay High School and East End Community School. But as students have had to, as we all know, not necessarily be in school, and we talk a lot about how are students receiving education and how are they receiving their learning at home, there's also a reality where students are receiving their schooling through a third party, through a community partner, where they're not able to be at home due to parents or due to circumstances at home, so they need to find a different place besides school where they can safely get this education. And these community partners, especially in the Portland area, have been really significant to the ways that we can interact with students during this time. And we've had a few different really successful programs that have run not just with direct communication to schools, but also with communication to the community organizations that are providing school to them, providing school at the Boys and Girls Club, providing school at Portland Community Squash or wherever they happen to be in the Portland area. So two really successful programs we've had have been bringing what we would normally bring to their classroom at the beginning of the day. Instead, we bring to a community organization where they're getting their schooling. And one example of that has been our work with Portland Community Squash, which is not necessarily like a no-brainer there, community squash music, but creative solutions for creative times. And we've been able to provide guitar classes to students who are in their math class at 10 o'clock, and then they come to their guitar lesson after, and then they go to lunch. We've also been able to, also through the help of the Maine Arts Commission, be able to offer a digital music class to students who were taking their schooling at the Boys and Girls Club, which was amazing. We happened to have our last day of that today, and I might just, if I can manage this while also talking, show you a little file of what we had sent to them. Maybe I can, if it's not possible right now, it's not. I'll see if I can drop it in after when I can think clearly. But we ended up creating these portable digital music workstations that we delivered to them to receive their remote learning there. So they logged on to Zoom and were able to take the class just like any other class. And we have made some awesome projects in Ableton for digital music. Some other programs that we've been doing this year have been communicating directly with schools to delicately navigate those areas where students are not getting the essential learning that they would have been getting last year through their full-time music or arts teachers, which is a fine line to walk, wanting to be completely supportive of every single public school teacher that is there, and also wanting to supplement and lift up the work that they're doing, and to recognize some of the realities of this time that we're living in, where that teacher might not be able to provide lessons, they might not be able to provide that band ensemble, they might not be able to provide that art class right now because of the realities of what the school day looks like now. So we've been working with places like Freiburg in the middle school there, the Mollyauket Middle School, to provide some programming virtually that they weren't able to this year due to the particular teacher schedules. And lastly, we've really started to explore the particular moment that we're in now for students through some sensory rhythm workshops that really get down to the bottom of what are students feeling at this moment, what are they needing, and how can we be stewards of promoting healing during this time through art and through community connection together. So as we've gone through this journey of many different projects and programs, and they have not all been successes, a lot of it's been, we have students that want this thing and we have a partner that wants this thing, and we're going to try a bunch of things to make it happen. But some of the common themes have been that a lot of our priorities in the past have been driven by the acquisition of technical skills in whatever the music or the art is that we're teaching. It has been kind of a progression of, this is a curriculum we'd like to go through, this is where students need to get, this is what we'd like to evaluate at the end. And we've had to kind of do a 180 on that and reprioritize instead what are the more basic needs that students may not be getting met right now that we can be a part of delivering to them. And that might be a sense of peace, it might be a sense of safety, it might be a sense of creativity or a sense of community connection. But being really humble and knowing that we are a steward for these things through art and through music, and that sometimes, I think increasingly more now, is taking precedence on how far exactly we're getting in each program, and not using the same yardstick to measure that we were a year ago. And,
Alicia.
Yes.
I forgot to give you the 1 minute.
Oh gosh, I'm so sorry. I will wrap up then. I would say that my 3 takeaways for you as you're looking to create programs then, and as you're talking with schools, would be to be flexible, because there's so much that can change from week to week. We all know this. Be flexible with timeframes, expectations, how you're delivering it, the technology you're using with it. To pay attention to not just what's possible for you and for students, but what the capacity is for students, knowing that we all need a little extra grace and space in the creation of programs. There might need to be a slower pace, as I mentioned, and we need time for reflection through each one of these programs. And the very last thing I'd say is be aware of your preparation. And I know this was spoken about a little earlier by Bridget, but everything's taking more time for less output, and to be aware of how you are living through that, and to make sure that that is observed in the way that you are then showing your time, showing your energy, showing your worth to the schools and organizations that you're working with. Make sure that that time is marked, and make sure that you're getting all the prep you need, because things change really quickly around here. So thank you so much. Thank you, Martha.
Thank you, Alicia. Okay, so many. I have questions. I hope other people do. So we're going to be listening now to Tim Christensen, who is a teaching artist, an author, and a porcelain artist from Roque Bluffs.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. I am in Roque Bluffs, way down east. I live and work up here in this tiny little cabin, which has had to become, everything, like so many of our places where we do our teaching now. So my studio's up here. I live here, and I also teach with a similar array as Bridget showed. I teach for public and private schools wherever they are, community providers, and for homeschool groups, as well as adult ed through nonprofit community organizations. Right now is our time as artists, art educators, and administrators, and art organization leaders. We don't have to be constrained by the limitations of physical proximity or even synchronous time. And in the visual arts, we're engaged every day in problem solving, effective open communication and connection, conversation over time, language, cultural and distance barriers. Most importantly, we teach and learn resiliency in the visual arts classroom. All of these things are things the world sorely needed prior to the pandemic. A lot of them are the reasons why we invented this great, arguably great thing called the internet. And of course, now in times of COVID-19, and presumably going forward, we need them even more. We're all going through a traumatic experience, not the least of which are the school kids living in real time an adverse childhood experience. And one of the things we know about ACEs is that long-term antidotes are conversation, connection, and resiliency. So how do we as teachers, teaching artists, or administrators focus on these things while teaching through a screen, or when half of the kids are on screens at home and half are in the classroom? These challenges and opportunities are what drive me today in my teaching practice. And I'm sure they drive everyone out there as well. It's kind of why we're all here, right? I embrace many of the parts of remote teaching as critical enhancements to the classroom. I don't look at this as being, I don't even look at this as being on balance a negative thing. I think a lot of the negative effects that we have are due to the bundling of social services and education in schools. I'm not sure that that's a, I think that has been a convenient marriage in the past. I'm not sure that that's something going forward that is a model that's going to work. I think it complicates teachers' jobs, and I think it complicates and makes harder the lives of kids. So if we take that side of things out, and as a teaching artist, that's not necessarily, I don't usually have a lot to do with that. I may have to do with communication in the lessons that I teach, but in terms of like, delivering food, that doesn't tend to be in my bailiwick. Thank goodness. I have a hard enough time with that on my own up here. So when I take that out, I actually see a lot of advantages to teaching remotely. First of all, I can push the sliders on all the things that work, like one-to-one conversation, digital resource sharing, allowing the kids a view of a process that's better than they could get in a typical classroom experience, like looking down into a hot raku kiln, a close-up of my hands as I draw, what my studio looks like, kind of what my day-to-day artistic practice is, things like that. Predictability is another advantage that we have right now in a highly unpredictable world. And I like the chat window for aside conversations. I know I was one of these kids. I grew up in a family of kids like this who learn through kind of joking and conversing and little asides with their friends, and those are things that kids typically get into trouble with. for a lot of kids, that's how they're going to learn. And so they can carry those things off in the chat room. Someone will let me know if there's something there I need to pay attention to. But basically, I like those things. I minimize my use of things that prove more difficult. And this is really the challenge, right? Multi-day projects are difficult because we don't have the same mix of kids in person or at home time to time when I see them. And projects with skills requiring tools and materials that can't be brought home on a moment's notice, and sadly, group projects requiring physical proximity. So those are the things that I've had to modify in the way that I typically come into a teaching artist situation. The biggest challenge I face day to day, aside from schools without a plan for distant learning or hybrid learning, is keeping up where the kids are from moment to moment. We all basically live a year in a week right now, and in stable times, kids change quickly anyway. So keeping up with them right now is a real challenge for me, especially when I'm trying to gauge that sometimes through my phone or my laptop. Throw in the effects of isolation and a lack of routine, and as resilient, as strong as these students have become, the visiting artist or the art teacher in the classroom has a real challenge on their hands. I leave room to abandon my plan or benchmark or syllabus in order to meet those students' needs, whatever they are. Do they need to talk right now, or do they more need to learn to make colored clay beads? That answer is going to be different every single day, and sometimes within each kid. Do they need to move because the stress and the regimentation is hard on physically minded kids, and so they need a big physical project? Or is something little and delicate going to more suit where they are on any given day? I do my best to bear in mind that attention spans right now for middle school and younger artists are cut in half. And so I temper my expectations accordingly about how much we're going to get done. I also try to remember that the needs of 2019 and before, right? I've been in the classroom now as a teaching artist for like 12 years. So, I have to relearn all that.
One more minute.
Oh God. All right. I'm going to go so fast. May not be the needs of 2020. So I watch and listen and try to understand each young artist and what they need individually. This is the most important thing, one-to-one connection. Is it, again, sometimes difficult, just like the first time I walked into a classroom, to see them as a group of individuals in front of me rather than a singular class. This personal connection is what drives the whole thing, as it is always, and I place it at the top of the list of important tasks in each class. Of course, it helps immeasurably to have a strong team on the other side of the video link. My best case scenario is a teacher with whom I've previously worked and who knows my strengths as well as I know hers. We've discussed ahead of time and know what we want to deliver to the kids in our time together, what assessment or other benchmarks we'd like to achieve, and we have a specific plan for sharing online and in-person resources. As well, in this perfect scenario, every kid has access to a screen, and even the students who are in person. This allows me to deliver the strengths of remote learning to everyone, regardless of whether they are at home or in school, and allows the in-class teacher to deliver her version of that as well. She may focus on material help managing the production of the online class and classroom management skills. All kids have personal access to me, and the rest of the class can watch in close-up details we wrestle with challenges in the creation of our art projects, as well as see the successes as the result of successes. Should schools suddenly go remote, working this way means we have a plan to deal with that already. Or if they go all in person, we can deal with that too. I'm still learning every day, and I'm hopefully getting better. I've had literally the worst day teaching and the worst teaching experience since I began in the last 2 months. And I've had some of the best teaching experiences since I began in the last 2 months. My path from being passionate to being passionate and competent to being passionate and skillful and expert is long and not necessarily linear. But one of the things I have to do is give myself lots of room for that and recognize that it's kind of like I'm teaching for the first time. And for the kids, it's kind of like they're going to school for the first time.
Okay.
That's it.
Right. I've heard that. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Tim. And so many more things to say and learn. I have more questions for you also. I'm not the only one.
You muted yourself, Martha.
we got this tech thing down. Thank you, Tim. So Dana Lagavietz is a theater teaching artist in Bodenham, and Theo Forcier is a Bodenham Community School graduate who's now at Mount Ararat Middle School. Thank you so much for coming, Theo. So you all get the floor for a while.
Great. So Theo, I'm going to go ahead and start, if that's all right. And I'm going to bring my resume share. Sorry, I'm trying to share my screen. There we go. Hi, everybody. It's so great to be here and see you all. As I said, I'm sharing my time with a student collaborator, Theo. So I'm going to race through this stuff, but here's my information. I love to brainstorm and to sort of develop and cheer on new ideas, so please do reach out to me. I'm a theater artist, teaching artist, and arts educator. I'm going to start my timer too. But I'm here speaking about my role as director and theater program coordinator at Bodenham Community School, and also my experiences as a teaching artist with the building community through the arts program of the Maine Alliance for Arts Education. So I basically am a community-based artist who makes theater with children and youth, and this is work that used to look like this in the before times. Lots of bodies really close together, packed into one space on one stage. That was a cast of an adaptation of Charlotte's Web. There were over 70 kids in that play. And then suddenly that work pretty much overnight started looking like this. So we had a cast of, I think, over 80 kids in an adaptation of The Wizard of Oz that ultimately transitioned to Zoom with, I think we ended up with about 20 kids. And then this is a photo from an in-person residency at Troy Howard Middle School in Belfast. As you can see, everyone is masked. This was in September. They were full-time in person at that point. I suppose in theory we should have been distanced as well, but you can see what the room looks like. And that little arrow is just my shout out to the theater teacher there, Jason Bannister, who said yes. And the administration in the school said yes to welcoming a teaching artist into their midst, into their space in the midst of a pandemic. So I'm grateful to them. But those photos don't actually capture what the work of school plays and making original theater with kids is. So a lot of the work is actually moments like this, right? So it's the conversations the kids have with each other, the relationships that they build with each other, moving together in space, moving together playfully, creatively, safely now, which is, we have all got to learn that, right? We've got to relearn how to be together in space, and that's not going to change. And around the school play, it's the community that comes together in celebration of the school play. It's the connections and the art that is made around the stories and of the play and those relationships. So the values that underscore these experiences, the values that we as artists bring to our work, are pandemic proof. Those values aren't going to go anywhere, and they are not eroded. And if anything, they're going to be stronger than ever. But we need to adjust the platform by which we can build programs that support those values or are driven by those values. So I would say to make local, sort of stealing from the buy local, wherever you are, if you were to have those conversations, to reach out to the local schools, the community groups in your areas. To be useful, I couldn't think of another place, a way to say this. It doesn't sound glib, but to be of service. I found tuning into school board meetings really eye-opening, not only about what the issues were in the communities, but also what teachers and administrators are dealing with and trying to solve right now, and the issues, all of the issues that are way beyond academics and learning right now, that as artists, we can meet those issues. So, right, we can design experiences for those students and those families to be supportive. And then the values of putting the students at the center, removing barriers to participation, whatever those are. designing the projects so that they work for those with the fewest resources, and reaching out to the unusual suspects. Whenever I'm working with a group of kids, I'm like, who's not here? Who isn't part of this conversation? How do we reach them? So always looking for the people who aren't there, and then trying to find a way to reach them. And then just being creative around the platform, thinking inside the box, in this case, the Zoom box. I love trying to break Zoom. Zoom and digital spaces now they have been for a while, but they are a creative frontier. And there's things that we and the students can figure out and do and play with that is creative in and of itself and really fun to do. I do believe that less screen time is more. The time is not the same. So I try to plan even less via Zoom. Design your project to allow for poor Wi-Fi. It's going to happen. So just like, once again, like the worst Wi-Fi, it has to work for those kids as well. I also am a huge fan of things that happen in the chat box. Also, it's multimodal. Not all kids are like super articulate or energetic or out there, but they will chat away, and that is awesome. And then taking things offline, I'm really curious now and inspiring those offline activities. And lastly, letting students lead, trusting there's going to be momentum. And I'm gonna leave you with, before I pass it to Theo, who's going to talk about his experience. Everybody needs to see this duck in the rain. That's my gift to you. But what this duck represents to me is persistence, resilience, and this sort of unflappable joy. And that's what I wish for you in your work and for all those students that you end up working with. I'll stop sharing and hand it over to Theo.
All right. When I first heard that they were doing a Wizard of Oz play at Bodenham, I knew that my brother, Ollie, would love to join because we had both participated in the Bodenham plays for a few years past, but his roles were definitely on the smaller side, including a lion that had 2 lines, roar and roar. And at the time, he was in 5th grade, which is the oldest class at BHM, and we both hoped that he would get the lead role, or a lead role, and he was chosen to be the wizard. So we were both really excited. We had all these plans. I was going to go to the play, kind of watch it. And then COVID happened, and going into online school meant there was no play. And if that doesn't disappoint somebody, I don't know what would. Fortunately, a month or 2 later, we received an email stating that the play would be held on Zoom with an adapted script and new roles. Ollie got to keep his, and I found out I could help with the production, and I was mostly going to design props and kind of help facilitate in a way. And then to help read the script at one of our early meetings, I filled in for the Scarecrow lines, but mostly focused on building props. And so when the script came along, it said that I was chosen to be a Scarecrow. And I was genuinely surprised because at the time I was a 7th grader in an elementary school play. But I was very excited, and I did strive to do my best. So we spent many afternoons practicing, many hot days of being in costumes, reciting lines. It was very fun. And then the time came to present on Zoom. We hadn't need to memorize our lines because we could have them on the screen, but a lot of people still did. I memorized about half of mine. So throughout the show, there were very, very few mistakes. It was like 1 or 2 people forgot their lines, and some of the internet was a little bad. I would say the worst mistake for me, there's a scene where the wizard comes and I'm supposed to act all surprised, but I act so surprised that I hit my computer off of my table and it closed itself. So I was in like an anxiety attack trying to get back onto the call. And then when the end came, there was a humongous applause. And at that moment, I knew that a Zoom play was possible. So adaptations to the script were mostly pretty much all done by Dana. I thought it was a great job, like lots of comedy, playing at the fun at COVID-19, almost like Dorothy and her friends were in the COVID-19 world. And we used Zoom to its advantage to have creative writing. And with props, because that was my original purpose, what I would do, hold on, actually. I really just tried to find anything around the house. And so that's the wrong one. Where is it? There it is. So what I would do is I would take a scene from the movie. I rewatched the movie before we did this. And I would focus on like famous backdrops per se. And I would look at some of the things that made that scene iconic and tried to build them. So I made Dorothy's house out of duct tape and cardboard, which I spinned around on my finger for the tornado scene. And then there was a lot where we would go somewhere over the rainbow. We would have a violin, I forget her name, accompany us. And then one thing that I wanted to include as a little comedy is a duck. And it's just a puppet duck. However, it still was a pleasant experience. I get a lot of compliments on it. So yeah, sure. I think all in all, the Zoom play went really well. It definitely showed a new experience in theater. I think it actually could have an opportunity to be online. So yeah.
Thank you, Theo. That was really great show and tell there. Gosh, we just zoomed through those, and anyway, lots of questions are coming in. So, Bridget Rankowski.
Yes, I'm here.
Has been fielding those. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so we have a couple questions here, and I'm going to add spotlights to all of our amazing presenters. Feel free to keep sending your questions to me if you would like to. We have, kicking things off, how have the teaching artists dealt with the reduced ability to assess how students are doing compared with in person?
Jump in.
I'll address that in a super basic way because I'm dealing with kindergartners. And so what we found after the first day,
Alicia, you got to turn off your.
I got it.
What we found after the first day was that I wasn't able to create a personal connection the way that we were doing it. And every teacher was called at home that night to bring in a tablet or phone. And so in addition to doing my thing on their big screen, the teacher would then walk around to every student with their phone or their tablet and give 2 or 3 minutes of just, at my request, not saying anything, no commenting on the teacher's part, but just giving me a view of the child working with their name somewhere in the view. So I asked, by the third day, I asked that everybody have just table cards with their name on it because you can't usually see the name tag. That made such a huge difference to the students, but also I could make sure that they weren't just in the far back corner of the classroom, just going through the motions. And the teachers' comments on the difference that made, even though it seemed really nudgy and a lot more work for them, you can't do it without it. I really do believe that you're kind of just another TV show, you're another screen if you can't have somebody walking around, or alternately having every kid in the room, in the space, or in the Zoom get to have a one-on-one with you. And so there was one classroom where kids just approached the laptop one at a time, showed me where they were in their work. I made sure that happened before they were done, so it wasn't all about their product. And I just found that super duper important and invaluable for me.
Yeah, I definitely second what Bridget just said. That one-on-one connection once or twice in each lesson is just critical. They're all going to be in different places, and if I'm working with the classroom over a number of different sessions, they can really start to kind of build a rapport with them. And I find that they talk more, and they both speak more in the things that they're making and also verbally with me. I have to, I just listen, and that's super helpful.
I would add that it's really important as well when you're trying to make sure that everyone is moving forward and on task to not let yourself accidentally ignore the student that has their video turned off or hasn't said anything in a while. It can be really easy for us to assume, oh, they're just following along, they know what's going on. And I found 9 times out of 10 it's because that student does not know what's going on, or there's a distraction in the room, and it's often something that will derail us for a minute or two to communicate with that student and make sure they're right where they need to be, but it's just so immensely valuable. And I think students feel that too when they know that they're not going to get left behind, that they're really going to be checked in on.
I just want to say that I opened up the chat so that questions are seen by everybody now. Bridget.
Other questions. Any thoughts on projects that have been more successful in remote learning, or ones that were maybe not a fit? Specifically talking about the form of these projects.
I have a list actually that I refer to every time I'm trying to set up a residency, or if I have a long-term engagement that I go to for what the next lesson is. You know, I have to plan, we all have to plan kind of sometimes up to a week in advance. So that means getting kits together and getting them there and so that everything's ready to go. So if kids are transitioning, so I have a list, and it is studio visit, introduction to scientific illustration, nature journaling, etching intaglio at home on PETG plastic, sgraffito at home with cups and tiles that are already prepared in their own tools, colored porcelain beads, raku finger puppets, raku pinch pots, and glaze and return raku throwing forms. And those are all things that I've tried and practiced, and they work great. And so it's kind of my menu. And then once I get bored with those or feel like something else needs to happen, then I develop something new and I take it from beginning to end, and then that gets on the list.
I can also think of a laundry list of things that I've tried both in person and hybrid and all remote in the last 8 or 9 months that have been complete flops. I would say things that required too much technology on the part of students, things that require too much instruction each week that doesn't give a lot of time for student exploration, but more so than that, if you're in week 2 or something of a project and you realize that you're going down a path that's not going to be successful for the students, I think this is an amazing, humbling time to have that conversation with schools and to change tack and to try something new. And I have been humbled by doing that in a few different projects, and being willing to make big changes and to listen to what's going well and what isn't, I think is even more important than getting it right on the first try, because we don't know it's gonna go well until it does.
I'll add that I found myself approaching the school way before it was starting and saying to the teachers, if you don't actually want to do this residency, like, I totally get it. And if there's any version of this that actually, you know, meets a need, then I will just do that. And the teacher immediately answered, emotions. Their emotions are crazy, and we're having so much trouble with kids being able to identify what's going on for them and communicate it. So I scrapped what I've done the last 2 years and focused on abstract expressionism. And like the whole first half of it was, you know, getting in your screen and showing me this feeling and that feeling. What are words for the feelings? And then how we express them with gestures. And so there was a lot more kind of circus in front of the screen before it went down to that. But the teachers, if you can be that flexible, if you can go to the teachers and say, what's on your mind? What's a challenge for you guys this year, and build off of that, that will be a successful program, I think.
Theo, as a student who's kind of going through all this, have you noticed anything that you talked about having a lot of fun with the theater program online? Are there any other projects that you're like, I really don't want to sit in front of this computer and stare at a screen?
There are definitely a lot of projects that you would do in school that when you try to do it on a screen, you can't exactly get the message, let it be educational or some other thing. Like, it kind of blocks a perception. I'm trying to think of an example. Let me think. say for example, my science class, we were going to do Newton's laws, and by doing that, we were going to go into the middle school, put an egg in a carton, and see if it would break depending on how many parachutes you put on it. When you try to do that on a computer, you are telling students to get their own eggs and get their own cartons and get their own parachutes, and it works for about half the students. And so what ended up happening is we needed to adapt, except we didn't have enough time to adapt as it was the end of the school year, and we ended up not doing it. So I would say for some things, online school works great, and then for others, you can't really fulfill the education that you would have in a real life environment.
Well said. This is for everyone. Any advice on making communication with schools and teachers as smooth as possible during these times?
I would say CC everyone on everything. CC just anyone that you're working with, even if it's the person that you think might be in the room for one day on week 3, to make sure that you're taking a few extra steps to keep everyone in the loop of what you're planning, and to not assume anything about the environment that the students are in, or that the teachers are in, or that the administration is in, financially, or with the supplies they have, or the time they have. Because things that could have been assumed previously, like students have a laptop, or students have video capability, or students have a calculator, or teachers have 10 minutes to grab this thing before the class. You can't assume any of that anymore. So I think just a lot of forward communication, a lot of follow-up, and making sure people on the periphery of your project are also in the know is really helpful.
I added to the document that's in the resource sheet about when you're planning. I love that somebody asked this question. Like, kudos to you for even being sensitive about that. But teachers at this point don't even have a faculty lounge. So they're not having daily conversations with each other. So their inboxes are crazy. So first of all, don't email it if you don't have to. If it's just your thoughts on like some things, like they don't care. And secondly, put exactly what you need from them in the subject line, bullet points, CC everybody, absolutely. Short and sweet. But again, if you don't need to say it, just don't, because they're looking at, Carrie said she had 50 to 70 emails a day because she's got the parents and teachers just having little conversations. So minimal will be more productive, I think.
I would also say look for opportunities to document the work, to document what your students are creating frequently. Like, just remind yourself to do it. And it's such a nice positive thing to be able to share back. Like, if you just, rather than if someone does ask you, I agree, like checking in frequently. I also agree, like email, and like it's a fine line between being accessible, reaching out, being in communication, and not taking up space. There's that balance of like, they are stretched so thin. But if you could say, look at this cool thing, this moment that we had, or this thing that the student made today, or this thing that was said that is nice and positive, I think that's appreciated.
Yeah, I use whatever platform works for the teacher, and the administrators, or whoever I'm collaborating with. Sometimes that's Facebook Messenger, sometimes it's a text app, sometimes it's Instagram, sometimes it's email. Wherever they are and wherever they can access it most easily and write back to me with the least disruption is where I'm going to be for them.
So we have a question around seeking positions or schools/groups that are open to bringing in artists right now. In the past, some teaching artists have gotten grants through Dance Edge grants and other ones. And we're just wondering, because even before funding for the arts was so limited, there were assumptions that there would be zero available funds during these times. Any information or advice to accessing those funds as people have done at-home residencies before?
I can say a couple of things on this. I hope you all know that the Arts Learning Grant deadline is in, March or April. And I kind of wanted to have this workshop so that people could start thinking strategically in case they wanted to do a remote or hybrid kind of residency. Who knows what next year is going to bring. But I will say that in my conversation with Principal LaJoie from the Bodenham Community School, if you already have a relationship with a school, there's funds that aren't being used for various things. So most schools got CARES Act funding. If you're not talking about a lot of funds for materials and some a stipend, as he said, people really need this kind of experience right now, and it's a good time to just to experiment. And so I would say if you already have a relationship and you have an idea in mind and a clear budget, there might be some funds. There might be.
I think another thing you can do for yourself as you're looking to find grant funding or find school funding for your programs is to communicate with the school or with the teacher you're working with far in advance about what you're looking to do, so they're on board with the mission of the program, and they might be able to help you put together grant applications. And those grants are often stronger if you have direct input and support and buy-in from that school that you can talk about in the grant, or they might have avenues to access certain funds if they know about it in a certain period of time. And as Martha said, I think there's also some creative budgeting that can happen, not even just at the school level, but even at the district level, where there might be funds that are not available specifically through that school, but might be allotted to the entire district for certain programs like this. But you won't really know until you start asking those questions. And then, of course, keeping the budget small to begin with, so it's not so much of a buy-in to schools. If you have a multi-year plan for how to scale something, so as they see the value in it and they see it pay off, that they can then be investing more money into it because they're seeing that flourish in the school or in the classroom.
I think for me, I generally let the teacher or the organization know that it's their responsibility to find the funds. We plan far enough ahead, and there's a strong enough emphasis on what it is that they'll be getting that's really valuable to them, that they are able to take that to their administrator, the local arts organization, or their district or whoever, and really say, like, this is what I need to buy, and here's the funding that it's going to take for me to get that, and here's how it's going to augment what I can do in the classroom. I look at it the same way as if I were selling a kiln or I were selling clay or whatever. Those people don't have to find funding to provide their service, and I don't either. That's not really my job. My job is to tell them what specifically they're going to get and why I think it would be valuable for them to have
it. And this question was directed towards Tim, but I'm going to ask it of all of you. Do you have any images of projects you facilitated online? So examples that people can kind of see. Alicia was sharing hers that got shared to everyone in the chat too. Bridget was showing the workspace. Do you guys have anything kind of similar to that?
Martha, are you going to share the trailer at some point?
You're muted.
Yes. Do you, I have the link to that, don't I? Do you have it handy?
I can look for it.
I can look for it too. Why don't you answer and I'll look?
Oh, well, there's a trailer. There's a trailer of the play that it's a 4-minute trailer of what was, I think, ultimately about an hour and 10 minutes, Theo, does that sound right? Of the school play last year.
I'll send it out afterwards.
Okay, great.
I have a SoundCloud link of a few projects, a few songs that have been composed and created by some participants in our programs over the last few months. So I'm going to drop that in the chat, and know that tomorrow there will be a bunch of new recordings from our digital music class with the Boys and Girls Club.
I don't have very much. I have images of the material kits that I send out, and those are on my website. But it's funny. When you said that I should be taking pictures, I thought, yeah, I really should be taking pictures. The one thing that I do worry about, and I pay this a lot of mind when I'm teaching online, is that this is online, right? And I really get nervous about, and I would be nervous were I a parent or a kid, about just having lots of images of my kid or their artwork out there. And so I don't take a lot of pictures of those things. I feel like that's kind of, if I were in the classroom, it would probably be between me and the kid, or the teacher and the kid, or the school and the kid. And so I kind of make sure that I don't propagate a lot of that. I don't know whether that's good or bad. It's just kind of where I am right now. And I haven't needed a lot of pictures.
I think in some schools it's actually you are not allowed to take screenshots for good reason. You saw that the screenshot that I shared with you, I had to go in and get all the names and all the eyeballs. So, but pictures of the product is something that I did ask the teachers of, and I haven't gotten them back yet. But you can check Arts Are Elementary on Facebook, and they tend to post things that teachers are doing at the time.
That's a really important point, that many schools have photo permissions specifically for students. So if you're looking to capture media for reporting on a grant or for securing funding or whatever it is, to start that conversation early. If you need that media, asking who has photo permissions and who doesn't, perhaps being okay with some creative images. I know we've taken a few that I don't have right now, regretting it, but where there's a music note over people's faces, which is only a little weird, but to protect privacy, of course. So talking with the teachers ahead of time can usually produce good results if you need them.
Okay. I think what we're going to do right now is, if there's any more questions, we were going to have 2 sessions and have breakout sessions, but I think if there's any more questions now, let's do it now. And I think what we'll do is, if anyone wants to get into small groups, I'm happy to be here for that, so that people can get a chance to think out loud. Otherwise, people can always get in touch with me, email me. I'm happy to talk with anyone about how to go about, trying to get a residency going during this period. Any more questions?
I think Martin has a question.
Yeah, I'd like the opportunity to thank you all. I'm very humbled at your agility and your wonderful presence on screen and the work you've been doing. I've always been as easy and eloquent as you in the classroom. And from the work I see that you're doing, I feel like I've been sent back to kindergarten. Doesn't mean I don't have hope for acquiring some of the skills, but thank you so much for your presentations. That's all. I just wanted an opportunity. I couldn't even get my name and what I do and where I'm from in the chat so that you could even see that. I don't even think it went on. I still don't see how to get it on. So just thank you, and go ahead, Martha, because I know you've got a time constraint.
Oh, that's great, Martin. That was great to hear your voice, and this is a good time for that. If anyone else has anything else they want to share.
I think if we're all done with questions, I'm gonna turn off the recording feature so that this will be available for people later.